In today's video, we are going to look at iterations and aggregations in Make. I frequently see that people are struggling with this topic, so I decided to show you how to handle these situations. And I will also provide you with simple data to play with. So whatever you are going to see in this video, you will be able to replicate it yourself in your Make account. So let me first run this scenario. And typically, when you get an order, either like from WooCommerce, Shopify, or whatever, it always has line items, and line items are array, right? So you can have one order with like 50 items on it. You buy apples, bananas, oranges, etc. And the problem is, how to access this data within the array. For example, let's say you want to save this data to Google Sheet, right? But you can have like one item in that order, or you can have 50 items. And the question is, how to go about it. So I've prepared 3 tasks, which we will be covering in this video. So first one will be adding one row to a Google Sheet spreadsheet for each line item in the order. This means that one order will likely have more lines in the target Google Sheet spreadsheet, assuming that there are more than one items within the order. So we will be pasting the order data to this sheet with date, order ID, total price, and then product price, quantity. And if I have three products within the order, it will take 3 rows. In the second task, we will do the opposite. We will want to create only one row for the entire order. So the line items need to be aggregated somehow so they fit into one cell. Right? So we will have date, order ID, total price, and then in this cell there'll be all the products listed in the order. And third task will be about kind of replicating VLOOKUP within Make, and that will be retrieval of product name based on product ID from line items from my fake order. And now I will first show you how to actually get to the sample data so you can play with it yourself. I will link the data below the video or in the article, so you will be able to retrieve it. So I will start fresh. And what I'm actually doing, I will just explain the magic, is that I created a kind of like fake scenario where I am listening for pings to a webhook, and then I am responding to that ping with the fake order data, which is basically like a JSON, right? So all you need is that you take this URL, which I will provide to you, and you will use HTTP module. You will make a request to that URL. It can be get. You will run it. Then you will see, response 200 and data, but this is not the JSON you are looking for, right? So what you need to do is you need to convert it to a string. So JSON string, and you will use toString function for the data. When I run it again, I'm getting the JSON, right? So it's nicely looking JSON, but now I need to parse it via JSON module, via parse JSON. So I'll use that module and I'll just parse it. I'll parse the JSON string from the preceding module. So now I finally have the fake order data to play with, right? And here are my dreaded line items. And in this order, I have 2. So I will need to sort out, the processing of these items for my 3 tasks. And for the third task, actually for only line items will be for 2 tasks, and the third task will be, well, actually, yeah, it will be also. So in the third task, we will want to retrieve, this name based on this ID, but I have like two products here, so I need to somehow look up, the name based on the ID. So let's start with the first task. We could make this simpler. We probably don't need this variable. We could just use this, just Control A, Control C, and we can paste it here. Okay, we can remove this, and we should get the same result. I will just ignore the warnings. All right, so that's that, and here's my order. So now for the first task, we will add one row to a Google Sheet spreadsheet for each line item. So multiple rows per one order, because my fake order is two line items, right? So I bought bananas and then I bought also apples. So how to go about it? Well, first of all, since it's array and we need to iterate through all those items somehow, we will likely need to use something advanced. So we will go to Tools and we will use the iterator. Then we will drop line items into the iterator. And now we can see what's going to happen when I run this. Now, we have two bundles from that one array, which we use as input for the module, and the output bundles are the individual products within the order, right? So from now on, the scenario will be doing two operations, right? So one, but from this module on, it will be two, because now we are dealing with two products, because we are iterating through the line items. And I said that we'll be pasting the line items to a Google Sheets spreadsheet. So now we can go ahead and add a module called add a row from Google Sheets add. We can make for advanced. You can use this spreadsheet. And my sheet is one row for each line item. All right, and now, so for date, we can use the date of the order, which is, for example, this date paid, it's fair enough. The problem is that the format might be a little bit off here, so we can format the date to make it look like a standard date in the programming world. And we can format to years, months, days, and we can even add the timestamp like this. Then we will map the order ID from this, module, because that's the ID for the entire order. Then we can also map the total price, which is total. And then now it's time for products, for the individual products. So for those, we have to use the output coming from the iterator. And for product name, we will use name. For product price, we will use price. And for quantity, we will use quantity. And now when I run the scenario, two lines will be inserted into this sheet. See, so for each product, we created one line, but these order ID and total price, these two columns, those are repeated because they are coming from the whole order. But these guys, they are individual line items coming from the order, and all that thanks to the iterator, which was iterating through the line items. So that's how you can go about processing arrays in general. I deliberately chose arrays from an order because every website like Shopify or WooCommerce or whatever, line items will always come in an array. So it was a good real life example. Okay, so let's move to task number 2, which is going to be a bit more difficult than task number 1. And for task number 2, we will add one row for the entire order, which means that we will need to somehow aggregate line items from that order into one cell. So let's go and do it. So I can just remove this part because the beginning, it will be the same, right? You have to get the order, parse it out, so you get this. Then you have to iterate through line items because you want to aggregate them. Okay, so behind the iterator, we need to use an aggregator, right? So we compile that line items into one text string. So one piece of information needs to come out of this iteration at the end. And for that, we can use text aggregator module, where the source will be iterator, and we will be aggregating product name. You can just type it like this. Then I will use pipe as a separator. We will also want to show product price, and we will also want to show product quantity. And we will want to separate the aggregated products by new row. So this module will basically create this text string for each product coming from line items, and it will append those individual products, or it will join them not append, but it will join them via a new row separator. One nice trick you can do in these instances where it looks a bit cramped, you can always expand the window and make it look nicer, make it wider. Okay, now we have the aggregated products into one text string, so we can go ahead and add a row again into our Google Sheet. This time we will use this sheet, one row for the entire order. We will again use date paid. This time I will not be doing format date formula, and we can see how it's going to come out. Then we will map order ID. We will map total price. And now it's time to map products in the order, but they will come from the aggregated text, right? So I'm mapping the text coming from the text aggregator module. And now when I run the scenario, new row will appear here where all the product info, all those product from line items will appear in this cell as one text string. So let's go ahead and run it. All right. And now we have one order on one row with all the products aggregated into one cell. So this is how iterator works when coupled with aggregation. It's a pretty powerful concept. You should master this magic because it will be super helpful for you in many instances when working with Make. Now you may ask, all right, so how do I do, or what do I do in the real life? Like, do I go for this solution or do I go for this solution? Honestly, it's your call. Like, it's hard to tell. I mean, it's really not ideal to have it this way, right? Because the order ID is repeated, so it's not technically a unique row. But you can access all the products pretty nicely with like references within the Google Sheet, within formulas, etc. On the other hand, you are always sure that you have one row for each order. On the other hand, it's pretty difficult to parse out, for example, product price for bananas, right? It would be crazy formula to do it. So, it's your call. Okay, and now moving to task number 3. So, in the task number 3, we want to retrieve product name based on product ID from line items. And we want to get product name for product ID, which is equal to 985. So when I go to my scenario, I can now remove this part, can look at the JSON at line items. We can see that 985, the product name is apples. So we want to get this string based on this. So how to go about it? I will simply, retrieve it to a variable. And first of all, we will need to use, well, let's do a test. We will need to use map function, where we will be mapping stuff from line items. We want to get name, and you want to always type the raw name. So in this case, you see the raw value, it's name, lowercase. Sometimes, this can look more user-friendly, so this can be like name with capitalized N or product ID with space, etc. But you are always interested in the raw value, which in this case would be product ID with no spacing, right? This would be variation ID with no spacing. So for me, I'm retrieving name, and so it's a name lowercase. Now, based on what I'm retrieving, I will be retrieving based on the ID column. So it's the raw name is ID. And what's the value of the ID? 985. I will just type it on the keyboard, but normally this would probably be a value coming from preceding modules, which would be mapped. But in this instance, in this exercise, I'm just hard coding it. So let's see when we run this, what's going to happen. Okay, so we've mapped something, but you can see it's an array, right? So, but you want just like text string saying apples. You don't want like array and first item in the array. So now what? Well, now you can use get function, which will get the first item from the array. Right, so I've wrapped the previous formula with a get function where I'm setting, hey, give me first item from this array. I will run it now. And now you see it's regular text string called apples, and you could map it in subsequent modules. So if you were setting another variable behind that module, you could use this as just regular text. So this is the beauty of knowing the getMap function. It's allowing you to basically VLOOKUP values based on a key and return basically a different column, so to speak, if this was a table. All right. So that's it for today. I hope this is going to be useful. And as I said, I will provide you with this URL below the video or in the article on my site, so you can practice this magic yourself. Cheers.